Hello everyone, I'm Tim from Tim's PC and I build custom PCs to suit anyone's needs or budget. Also live stream my builds and repairs for transparency and educational purposes. So if you'd like to get an awesome new PC and you'd like to see it put together live, send me a message today. Alrighty, so we've got another Lian Dynamic 11 build on tonight, so that is always exciting. Everyone always loves the D011. Or as what I said to Christine tonight, I referred to this build as it's a what do I call it? A D11.
Yeah, it's a
D11. She knew what I meant. She knew what I meant.
It's like when I was a kid, 7-Eleven, we used to call it Slevin.
Yeah, Christine just said, yeah, we used to call 7-Eleven Slevin when she was a kid. It's kind of the same thing. That's what we do in Australia. We try to shorten things because we can't be bothered talking. That's kind of how we roll, right? Like, so we got the Lian Dynamic 11, so, or we could just call it the Lee D11. And everyone in Australia knows what the fuck I'm talking about. Everyone knows, right? Alrighty, enough bullshit. So let's go through the components here tonight. So we got the i7 12700kf. We've got the MSI Tomahawk Z690 motherboard there. We got 32 gigabytes of 3600 megahertz cl16 memory. So this is the top sort of performance, the DDR4 memory. You can go sort of faster in megahertz than 3600, but then you start losing it in the latency. So this is basically the sweet spot for DDR4 speed and latency. Costs you a little bit more, about $100 or so extra to get the 3600 CL16 versus like 3200 CL16 or 3600 CL18. And it's like one of the last things that you prioritize your money on in a PC build, right? So that's the sort of thing you get when you've got a solid CPU, solid processor, plenty of storage, good power supply, good cooler. And then you can go, yeah, okay, I've got a little bit of extra money to spend here. Let's get some real fast, low latency memory going on. So we got the RTX 3080 here. We got two 1TB NVMe SSDs. We have 850 watt power supply down there. A Corsair H150i cooler. And we've also got 6 Corsair SP120 fans to kit out our D11 case. Because even though our D11s aren't that expensive for a case, like they're fairly expensive, they're $200 a pop, but it's not too bad as far as PC cases go. The one thing you need to consider though is if you don't also buy 6 fans and a 360mm cooler to go in it, it kind of looks a little bit incomplete. Like, you know, you can fit smaller ones in there and stuff if you want.
Yeah,
but the thing is, you'll be looking at it, this is the thing, with a case like this, you're going to be looking at it and you're going to be staring at that empty spot and it's going to wear down on you over the months. Like, I guarantee it. I see it all the time. I see it all the time. But yeah, so that's the only caveat with this case. You got a little bit more to spend on like the cooler and the fans, but in the end, it looks awesome. We got Nick there. Hey Nick, how you going? Hey, it's been a while. How you been, man?
Nick says, yeah, I've been there before.
yeah, Nick knows. Nick knows what I'm talking about with the upgrade thing and it looking incomplete and it just wears down on you. So if you buy a case like this, if ever I suggest a Lian case like this to anyone, it always comes with the 6 fans and the 360mm all-in-one cooler. Yeah.
George says hi, guys.
Hey George, and who's...
Darren says hi from UK.
Hey Darren, how you going?
Hey.
Good to have you with us. Darren's probably our furthest away fan, I reckon. Out of the regulars, some, I mean, obviously occasionally I'll get someone from the US. I think there's like a tiny number of people from the US.
From Vietnam.
Yeah, can be a couple of people, Southeast Asia and stuff like that, we get a few people and stuff. But yeah, I mean, in terms of America, I guess, yeah, they don't see much of me in America. But I don't advertise towards America. I advertise in the Australian area. So even in New Zealand, you're probably not going to see much of me because I don't advertise in New Zealand. So maybe if someone moves to New Zealand and they're a fan of me and they introduce me to other people over there, then maybe we'll get some people actually watching me from New Zealand. There. It's not impossible to ship things over to New Zealand and stuff. It's just a little bit weird how the taxation works and stuff like that. So if you were to buy something from Australia, right, and you're in New Zealand, for example, so I would sell it to you and I would not charge you GST, and then you would be paying your own import taxes on that item, if that makes sense. So it's a little bit more complicated. So you'd get a quote from me and it'd be one price, but then you're gonna have to pay like whatever your taxes are on the other end. It's the same for anyone, but the thing is, if we ship it further than like New Zealand, it starts getting very expensive for PCs.
Yeah, sure.
They're heavy items, and it's relatively cheap, shipping PCs around on the East Coast and stuff like that. But as soon as you start, or even just anywhere in Australia, but as soon as you start going overseas, it starts costing a lot more, and then it starts not making sense for the end user, because it's like if you want to get a good PC and you want to spend ridiculous amounts of money on it, and then you don't necessarily want to be in another country from the person who sold you the PC if you have any issue with warranty or something like that. So that's why you don't see me market to New Zealand and stuff like that. And the couple of people who have asked me about it, who have been from New Zealand, once I've sort of explained how it works, they're like, "Oh yeah, I didn't even think about it." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm happy to do it for you, but I just want you to be fully aware of how this all sort of plays out."
So,
Yeah.
So I'm still needing to come see you. Sorry, holding it up. For so long.
Oh, dude, that's fine, man. I'm busy. I'm very busy this time of year anyway. Alrighty, so let's get started on the actual build. So we'll put our 3080 down here for the time being. I can't believe that I'm buying Gigabyte 3080s for under $1,000 excluding GST.
What? It's under 1,000?
Under 1,000 excluding GST. So 1,099 including GST. But yeah, under $1,000 3080s. That makes me happy, because that's 30. But like when they launched, they were about $1,500 if you managed to get like one of the ones that launched before the prices just went like that. If you managed to get one at launch, it was about that $1,500 mark for a 3080. So the fact that we can now get Gigabyte branded ones at like a third off that price, that makes me pretty happy. And I'm sure it's making a lot of people happy. You've probably seen a lot of 3080s in builds recently. For me, that's because the prices have come down. Not because I'm pushing more 3080s on people or anything like that. It's just pricing, and as soon as there's a big sort of shift in pricing and it affects the price to performance stuff, I'll get people who are asking for a 3060 Ti because that used to be the price to performance king, and then I tell them, hey, by the way, I can get you a 3080 for like $350 more than that 3060 Ti, and they're like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah. They're like, yeah, I'll go the 3080. $350 extra. Yep, I'm going the 3080 for sure. Alrighty, yeah. So this motherboard here, it's a pretty decent motherboard. We got the two 8-pin connectors for the CPU there. Really nice heat sinks on our MOSFET VRM co-processors. So this is really important stuff to look out for. Like, you can get cheap PC builds that'll have really, really cheap motherboards. You won't see any of this sort of stuff. But then the problem is, even if you put like an i3 in there or something that's not comparatively as powerful, if you put a big graphics card in there, that will also overheat and stress out all this stuff around the CPU. Because the graphics card, right, it communicates through what's called the PCIe bus. Now that has to be accessed by the CPU, and it's done all through here. So as soon as you put something high powered in there, it starts putting a bit more heat and a bit more pressure on the components around here. You start needing this. So in general, if you can get a motherboard that has, as a minimum, the heatsink there, that's just where I've got my hand now, that's over the MOSFET VRM. That's what you should be looking for as a minimum these days with, like, you know, modern graphics cards and stuff like that. The ones that aren't, you'll notice that if you look on temperatures, you'll see that all of that stuff is running noticeably hotter than on a board where we've got these sort of heat sinks and stuff like that connected. Yeah.
It's not too important. My PC is still running great. I haven't cleaned it since you last dealt with it.
Oh no, no, no. Oh no, dude. You got dogs inside as well.
And cats.
And cats. Oh no. Oh no.
And cats.
Oh no. That's worse. And Nick smokes as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the trifecta. That's how you get the stinky dust. Yeah, take it from someone like me who has to clean them out and stuff like that. Yeah, I can literally, because I've cleaned out a lot of PCs in my time. I can tell whether you've got a dog or whether you've got a cat, like, inside the house. I can tell whether you've got no pets in the house. I can tell whether you smoke cigarettes. I can tell whether you smoke marijuana. So,
Well,
but I don't care. I've got absolutely zero judgment on what you do in your personal life.
You do what you want.
I have no judgment, but I can tell from the smells of the PC dust.
Yeah.
There is a notable difference, and the colour. But yeah, so there's our 12700kf. So we don't get any coolers with any of our K series CPUs. And I know I feel like a bit of a broken record here, but I want to remind people again that the difference between the K and the KF CPU is the onboard graphics GPU on the chip. So if you're planning on running your K or KF series Intel chip with a graphics card, and you're going to be using your graphics card to game on, then you're not going to be using that integrated GPU. So if you can save 20 to 50 bucks by getting the KF over the K, that generally makes sense. Why you might want to get the K over the KF, that would generally be if you wanted to have another screen open that's not impacting your graphics card. So what I mean is the graphics card. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought there. That's really bad.
Getting old, babe.
I'm getting old. I am getting old. Getting distracted by what I'm actually doing. What was I talking about, babe?
I don't know. I was looking at something your parents shared on Facebook.
I'm getting dementia. I'm forgetting what I'm talking about. Being distracted by other things. That's so embarrassing.
So Nick says, it would be right, I don't have time to maintenance it. I won't come home and sleep. I have no idea what you're talking about.
God.
Does anybody else know what you're talking about?
That's so fucking embarrassing. That's so fucking embarrassing. But I know that it's happened to happens to the best of us. Maybe I need some drugs.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. Maybe not, she says. No, that would definitely make it worse. Alright, I'm just going to move on because I can't fucking remember what I was talking about. Getting dementia. I'm scared. Where am I? What am I doing?
I think you're building a PC too.
Oh, that's right, that's right. Building a PC. Yes. Alrighty, look, like I said, I'm just gonna move on here. We've got our two M2 drives installed down the bottom. Now, the reason why we do that is it leaves the other slot up the top here a bit more accessible. Not that we're probably going to install any extra storage, but maybe in the future we'll add another drive or something like that. So that'll make sense. Alrighty. So I've got our motherboard prepped there. We just got to get the cooler attached, and then we can turn our attention to the case, getting all of those fans in there correctly. So the thing is, if you are buying Corsair fans, they need their own RGB controller to go with them. So if you were purchasing your fans like this as a set of 6, you would need to make sure that you've got a controller. So if you're buying one of these 360mm all-in-one liquid coolers from Corsair, you will get a controller with that. However, it will only be for 6 devices. So if you are purchasing the fans singly, which might be sometimes cheaper than a 3-pack, the 3-pack will have a controller. So buy at least one 3-pack so you have another 6-device RGB controller included for you. Yeah. How much was this one? This PC was, this was 39.50, I think.
39.50 Australian.
Yeah, Aussie. Dollary dues. Or as another one of my YouTube subscriptions would say, what does he call them? Shitsvillian micro pesos. That's John Cadogan over at Auto Expert. Alrighty, so you're gonna need one of these. Actually, this version, this is the older version of the controller, and it's a little bit more of a pain in the ass. So here I've got a slightly different shade of yellow box from Corsair, and this contains the controller that I want to use with these fans. So here's our included controller here. This one's actually a really good one because it's got fan and RGB. So this is called, you might see it, it's called the Corsair Commander Pro. I don't recommend you buy them separately because I think they charge like nearly $80–90 for that, just for that thing. Which is generally a pretty expensive way to go there. Okay. And so we had an LGA 1700 socket here. I've talked about this a lot today with random people. The guy bought a whole heap of bolts and stuff off me. He needed like a new backplate and mounting hardware for a specific cooler and all that. And went through all this, and luckily he didn't have LGA 1200 or anything to deal with there, so I was able to put together a good little kit of bolts for him. But this Corsair one here, basically there's slidable little holes there that go through the motherboard, and all the way out is LGA 2066 socket, and all the way in is LGA 1200 socket, and LGA 1700 is sort of part way in the middle, so it's a little bit clunky sometimes to get it lined up right. There we go. So sometimes it's a case of just putting it on there, maybe getting two of them lined up there, and then just sliding the other two into position there. And then all the modern Corsair coolers that you're buying from major retailers now, they'll all have the LGA 1700 bolts, which are just slightly shorter to account for the slightly higher height of the CPU on the socket compared to LGA 1200. And so there was a problem when people were using the 1200 ones. People were bending their motherboards and stuff because they were over tightening it. You got to be very, very careful not to over tighten these things. Some of them have safety mechanisms to prevent people from over tightening, others not so much. Alrighty, so we don't have to worry about thermal compound or any of that with the CPU because we've got it already on the CPU block right there. And just put it down, bit of pressure, sort of wiggle it around a little bit. And then you should have a good amount of surface tension on there. And I'll just hold it in place for you while you get the first couple of bolts on. Just sort of thumb tighten them, and then you should just have maybe a quarter rotation or so, just to make them firm and even on all sides. with the screwdriver. Get the torque wrench out if you're really keen, but beyond a certain point it's not going to make much difference for our purposes. So in this case here we don't have a back fan, so we're going to orientate our cables around like this. That'll just sort of look better, just given the fact that it won't cover our RAM or anything like that. Sometimes we've got a back fan there, we don't want to obstruct that too much, so we'll do it around the other way like this, which is also fine. Fundamentally, what's important is that our radiator here and the ends of our hoses here are above the height where the pump is on the CPU. We don't want to have any air caught inside our pump. Not only will it make a bit of noise, but it will also cause the components inside the pump to wear out prematurely, so you don't want that. Anyway, this is the way that we're going to do it. So we want our cables for our fans down this way. And these are all SPs. Because I want to have our radiator hooked up through the Commander Pro, and we've got 6 Corsair fans on the Commander Pro. I'm going to use these fans on the radiator, and these fans here, these can just go on the bottom of our case. Have we got 3 fan headers down the bottom of our motherboard? We sure do. 3 fan headers down the bottom. Oh, 4 even. Cool. Oh, stupid. Alright. So this is probably the hardest part of the whole process here with these cases, is just getting all the fans in. You'll spend as much time on the fans as you will on any other part. It also adds a considerable amount of extra weight to the overall case, having this number of fans, because it's also the weight of all the extra cables and stuff as well. So we should have a shitload of Corsair bolts right there. Let's hope I don't forget anything else tonight. I already forgot what I was fucking saying. That's embarrassing. What's the dog whinging about now?
Cat.
Dog's whinging about the cat that doesn't want to be in the dog's phone. How long until the dog realises no matter what noises she makes, the cat's not going to want to be her phone? Fucking never. The other dog's just like, it's a cat.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Just got a few little cable ties to untie here. Sweet. Boom. So that's how it sits inside our case, just like that. And these cables here will run out the back and will plug into our controller. Alright, so I can go to the side for the moment because now we've got this case to deal with. So a fair bit of stuff to deal with here. 6 fans, then the motherboard and cooler has to be mounted in there, start getting everything else in place, and then the final thing we put in is the power supply. So Lian give you plenty of room to tie back all your cables and stuff under here. And we got some nice. Definitely a nice of Lian to start including a nice little screw storage container for the customers. I know a lot of customers that would appreciate that. Okay, we'll get rid of these retro 2.5-inch SSD slots down the bottom there. I guess that's for the person who likes to flex their SATA SSDs. Alrighty. So yeah, there's still SP 120 fans, the same as the other ones, but they're just a very slightly different version, and around the edge is just so slightly different. You have to really look and concentrate to even notice how it's different, because the outside shape is the same, the fan blades are the same, etc, etc. But just because these are the odd 3, we're going to put these on the bottom, which are facing down. So then if anyone's OCD, all the fans that are facing up will look exactly the same, and then the ones that are facing down might look a little bit different if you look closely, but you won't really notice it because I don't know where Christine's gone. Fucking around with the dogs. She loves those dogs. Doesn't fucking help me much. Alrighty. So. Alrighty, so just get one bolt in each fan so you can line them up and get the cables going where you want them. I don't know where the fuck she is. Can't exactly talk to people with fucking my moderator. Alright, so they're all in place down the bottom there. And so these are obviously our cool air intake fans. Oh, there you are.
So I've been seeing what dogs have been up to. They've been digging big, massive holes.
I know. Mum thinks they're digging for rats. I don't think they're
no.
I don't think they're digging for rats. They're just digging because they're dogs. They're digging because they're bored and they're puppies.
Yeah. They need more toys.
You buy them toys, but they still want to chew up everything else.
Yeah, but at least they're not digging holes.
They'll still dig holes. You buy all these toys and they'll still choose to go dig a hole.
Yeah.
They're only puppies, so they're going to grow out of it.
Yeah, I'm not. Do you see me worried about it?
No.
Yeah.
Do you see me worried too much about it?
No. Can you go back to the computer?
Yeah.
Okay, you know.
Huh? Shut up.
Yeah.
My boss says, oh, I don't speak good English, but how to do my process and do the virtualization.
Virtualization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
5950X or 12900K. Oh,
Personally-
I get it. AMD.
Personally, I'd go for.
5950 or
Personally, I'd go
12900.
5950.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Over 12900 for what you want to do. It's just a better behaved chip. And you got the extra threads. You got an extra 8 threads on top of the 12900K. So, yeah, pretty safe option there. Alrighty, so we got these 3 fans to go on our sidewall. So what you can do is you can slide the cables out of that slot there. So then we can mount them here on the side, as you can see, and the cables don't have to be sort of pinched in there like you have to do with some fans. Alrighty, so I'll do the same with this one. So just unslot them one cable at a time. And you should just be able to stack them on top of each other for now, roughly in position. There we go. Alrighty, so we've got our 3 fans there. The cable's right at the back. Yeah.
So it says any budget PC parts I should get for cheaper.
Any budget PC parts you should get for a cheap build? Not really. See, the problem right now in the low end is you've got Intel 10th and 11th gen stock still hanging around, so there's still some CPUs around. There's fuck all in the way of motherboards, so you end up starting to pay more for the motherboards because you don't have the good motherboard choice. And while AMD is your saviour with things like the Ryzen 5500 for like $200 or so, they've still got some cheap motherboards, but they're just about to launch a new generation, so that'll go the same way. So unless they cut the price on LGA 1700 socket boards, but hey, not sure if they're going to do that. If you're on a real budget and you can't afford to buy like a whole PC right now, I'd still recommend things like the 5600G. Put it in a decent case, put a decent power supply with it, and you'll be able to upgrade that. That's the best thing to do. If you start spending more money, it'll start to make more sense in terms of like what you're getting for your dollars and stuff like that. Because a lot of people try and buy like the cheapest possible stuff, but the problem in this day and age is the things that we're plugging into the motherboard and stuff are becoming more powerful, the graphics cards and stuff. So there's problems. You've seen it if you watch here regularly, you would have seen people who have bought in PCs with like really cheap ASRock boards that have no heat sinks on the board and stuff, and they have all these problems with them, and things are overheating, and then I end up telling them, hey, you need to swap to another motherboard, and then as soon as we swap to just a half decent motherboard, all the problems go away. So if you can't afford to buy a whole PC all at once, Ryzen 5600G, decent power supply, decent case, decent motherboard, as good a motherboard as you can afford, and then you roll with that for a while. It's not the greatest, but it's going to get you running modern games. And then you can save up and get yourself a card, or you can keep an eye out for something that's second hand. It's good. Keep an eye on Facebook Marketplace or something like that. So that would be my advice for someone who's trying to assemble their own budget PC right now. Because yeah, there's not a great deal in the way of budget parts.
Don't look at me like that.
Intel and AMD have no interest in sort of going hard for the budget things. Like none of these companies care about gamers or like what the end consumer can afford. They're just big corporations that want to make as much dollars as possible. So yeah, when people start paying more for PCs, they're just going to completely start ignoring the lower end of the market. And we can see it, but fortunately we do have solutions, like I said, like 5600G, which means you can get a PC, get started, and then you can add to it and upgrade it over time. So the problem is when you start buying a cheap PC, it won't be compatible, or you won't be able to upgrade it to anything better than what it kind of is. So you're kind of just stuck with what you've got, whereas if you go with the 5600G, that will get you your CPU and graphics card for $280, right? So pretty much can't go wrong with that. It's way better performance than like something like a GT 1030 or something like that. So yeah, you're already ahead of like a lot of the old shittier graphics cards, right? Okay, so we've got our bottom fans there that are going to plug in down the bottom. Simplicity. And then we've got these other ones here. These are going to plug into our Commander Pro with the ones on our cooler. Okay. So, time to get our motherboard and cooler in the case. So we don't have any offsets or anything like that we need to adjust. We don't have an I/O shield or anything like that. So one thing you want to do with your fan cables is you generally want to feed them through the same hole. Now there is a nice big rubber grommet that's designed for feeding cables through, but there are actually a couple of smaller holes just to the top of that, and that's actually where we're going to feed our lines through, because it just keeps all of the cables completely out of sight. So it's a little bit harder to do it this way, but then it just looks better. So if someone's paying me to build their PC, I'm going to do that, right? I'll just get a couple of bolts in our radiator and then I can stand it up, and then it will look like it's all pretty much done, but it's not. There we go. And now it's starting to look a bit cabley around the back here, and we don't even have any power cables. So this is what we've got to contend with. So like I said, these ones here, I'm going to sort of stick them up here together with all of these ones. Because they're all going to get plugged in together. So I can keep them out of the way there for a bit, that'll be nice. These bottom ones. So some of these will go into our secondary controller, which I should probably open up. Yes, yes, this is the version of the controller that I was looking for. This is the droid I was looking for, apparently. So both of our controllers need to be plugged into USB 2. So just FYI. Let's feed through those cables there. So we get concealed with our power cables up the top there. Already plugged in our CPU sensor. Don't think I'll have anything else plugging in up the top corner there. So I might be able to get a few more screws in this motherboard. Because after my shitty track record earlier, I feel like I'm going to forget more shit. We don't have any cables we need to feed behind our motherboard here because we don't have a micro RTX board going into this case. So there's room down the bottom for our cables to come through, which makes things a little bit easier. Not that it's very hard to run a couple of cables behind the motherboard as opposed to over the top of it, but it does still make life a little bit easier. Alright, so I'm going to plug these 3 fans in down the bottom. So the 3 fans that are down the bottom are the 3 fans plugged in down the bottom.
would be on the counter, mister?
For a counter cap.
What were you eating?
See, look at his lips like he was eating something. Can't see anything that he would eat. Are you licking the plate or something? Food up here. You're letting it over.
So we've got our front panel connections here. So there's no reset switch. There's just power, HD LED. And our power cables. Power LED, I should say. Sweet. Alrighty, so let's get these controllers kind of ready to go. Hot tip, get them all plugged in and then go to stick them down, because if you go and stick them down you might run into the unfortunate situation where one out of your 6 fans, one of the cables doesn't quite fit where it's mounted. So it's always good practice to get it all connected first, then work out the precise position that you're going to mount the controller in the case. So for these two, just got these USB 2s to plug in down the bottom here. And 2. There we go, so we can plug in these fans here into our second controller, and that can just stay loose down there for now. We do have this one here that needs to plug into our Commander Pro, plus all of these cables and shit that I tried to just put up there out of the way for now. So we've got our front panel audio, front panel connectors, we've got USB-C and 3 to deal with. Now they are right over here on the side, which makes our life easier. So that can go out there, and that can go out there. And that can plug in just like that. And that will plug in just like that. Okay, so it's looking like it might be power supply time. Alrighty, there's our modular power supply, there's cables.
I like it when they're modular.
What's that?
I said I like it when they're modular.
Yeah, it's alright. It's a little bit of extra stuff to do, but it definitely makes sense when you're doing a build like this. So you've got a shitload of cabling, and then you can decide what you need and what you don't need. So we got our 24 pin ATX power connector, we definitely need that. And so it's 24 pins on the end that plugs into the motherboard, and then there's 30 pins on the other end. So you have two separate connectors, a 20 and a 10 that needs to be plugged in on this end. I've had a couple of people over time bring me their power supply, and they've only plugged in the 20 pin, because obviously, like, if you just glance at it, you think that that's the same size as this. I mean, they're kind of similar. This is 4 extra pins, and you think, oh, maybe that one's for that and the other one's for something else. I don't know, but yeah, you definitely need both of them. If you trace the cables out, you'll see that they're all plugged in to this end. And so we need 2 CPU powers. Well, we don't really need them, but the board has 2 CPU power slots. And then we need 2 graphics card powers. There we go. And then SATA cables. So we'll probably only need, I mean, we've got the capacity there for 4 SATA cables. Wow. I'd love to see a setup that utilises 4 SATA cables. That would be cool. A lot of hard drives. Alrighty, so for our case here, 1 is going to be just fine. So always remember to put your fan facing out in this case. You don't want to suffocate your power supply. Your PC will just end up turning itself off. And the scary thing is if you don't know what the hell's going on, and then you think that your PC's like fried because it won't turn on again after it's turned off because the power supply is overheated. Because once the power supply overheats, it just won't turn back on again until it's cooled down. So that can be pretty scary for people. Okay, so these spare cables, I should just be able to put them away here in this hard drive tray. And then they're just there in case we ever need them in the future. We don't have any hard drives that are going in, I don't think. Okay, now it's looking a little bit more serious to deal with, doesn't it? Okay, so CPU. Yep. Okay, so we're going to have CPU power connected. Now motherboard. And see what you can do, because you got a bit of excess cable there, you just sort of tie it into a bunch. Don't get your cables crossed over though. And just kind of tie it into a bunch. And then just a single cable tie around it. And then you can just sort of stash that back there with the rest of your cables, and that'll be nicely hidden behind the that panel that goes on the back there. Alrighty. So we've just got our PCIe to connect. We've got our SATA devices here, but that's all relatively easy. Once again, we can actually tie most of this up. Because we've got long cables on the SATA connectors. So we can just bundle these, this one bunch of SATA cables together. And that can just get stashed away at the back there as well. And then we've just got these cables to plug in there at the end. Alrighty. Things are really starting to come along over here. So we might get our graphics card mounted. So slots 2 and 3 here. Sweet, here it is, the heart and soul of our gaming PC. It's our graphics card. The single most expensive component in pretty much anyone's PC these days. So pretty much. And so if you've heard bad things about like Eagle 3060 Ti being like a hot running card or something like that, believe me, you don't have the same problem with the 3080s. So while you won't see me selling too many 3060 Ti Eagles, I think I sold one system with one and I saw the stress test results and I'm like, yeah, never again. But the Eagles and the 3080s, you just can't build a shitty 3080, right? To make it meet the specs, it's got to be like decent. Okay, so at the bottom there we've got this, you can see a little bit of Tomahawk logo there. There's no other cables and stuff that are in view above the height of these bottom fans. Obviously there are cables at the bottom there. And so Alrighty. So things are starting to come along. They're looking pretty good around the front there. It looks like a completed PC, but we still have the rest of this to hook up. So it seemed like all of our cabling was like all done, but there's actually these other 12, 13 cables here that we've got to plug in. So just 13 more to plug in. It's not too bad. I mean, these videos are sort of an advertisement on why you might not want to build a Lian Li for yourself, especially if it's like your first PC build. If you want to build a PC like a Lian Li PC, maybe go build your nephew a PC first, like a cheap one. Have a little bit of experience before you jump right into one of these. Because I'd probably make it look easier than what it is. Okay, so now all of these are connected. So basically we'll be mounting this and then just tying these cables back. These cables here, probably won't even have to tie them back, we'll probably just be able to tuck them away back there. So we can go ahead and plug in the power for these controllers. 1 and 2. Alrighty. So let's bring this bad boy back up here. So this is the panel. So we're going to mount these controllers to the back panel here. So this bottom one, because it's the one from the bottom, we'll put it on down the bottom. So that's no problems. And then this one up here, this is for the radiator and the fans on the side. So sort of the top ones. Oh, better not forget to plug in our pump. Yep. So that'll fit nicely just there. Just put one cable tie around those 12 cables here, just to shorten a little bit of the length and just makes it easier to work on. I try to use as few cable ties around the back as possible because it just becomes a nightmare when you've got to actually work on it. So like when you have a fan that dies, because like, you know, you can sort of do everything you want to try to prevent things like this from happening, but you'll never fully prevent it. So don't assume that everything will just work perfectly for you forever. It definitely won't. There's everything, even if you get all the best parts, all the best brands and stuff like that with the longest warranty, things have a non-zero failure rate, okay? There's nothing anyone can do about that. And so yeah, that is what it looks like at the back. So not even very cable-y or anything like that. You don't have much to deal with. At least you don't have much to see when you open up. So we're ready to see whether it actually works. So that's always good. Let's see if I actually put it together correctly. Is it going to blow up? My brain's obviously not working at full capacity tonight, considering I forgot what I was saying mid-sentence just because the RAM distracted me. Keyboard, mouse. Go ahead and chuck my SSD in there. The Windows SSD in there. Power on. She's looking alive. You want to share the screen, babe? Oh no. The sticky's left a mark. Good old Lian Lee. Alright, let's go move on with this. Boom. So you always put sticky on the inside of the glass as well. It's good the sticky's not coming off. Yeah. What's up?
Last night, talking myself. I was like, oh. I'm sorry.
Alrighty. So we're nearly there. US keyboard layout, no other layouts. I don't have internet, what are you talking about? What's the internet? I'm in Australia. We don't have the internet. Just kidding, here's the internet. Okay. Alrighty, so we don't have any internet. So that means I'll plug in my Wi-Fi device. Okay, so we want Cinebench for our stress test. Alrighty, so we don't need our Wi-Fi dongle anymore. We got Wi-Fi on this motherboard, it's just Windows didn't recognise the drivers to start with. Okay. Let's get some basic stuff installed here. Alright, there's a graphics card driver. Not that we're running at a weird resolution or anything like that. Yes. Alright, we're nearly done. We're nearly done. Sure, we can decide what apps we want to open up automatically. We don't want every bit of software just opening up. Pretty much done. Once we got PLC. Alright, let's just set up this quickly for when we run our benchmarks. So even if you don't have an MSI graphics card, MSI Afterburner is still great software. It'll allow you to adjust the speed of your graphics card bands. Man, I'm really tired tonight. I think that's pretty obvious from my performance. While I put together the PC fine, I think my brain's ready for some time off. I'm just one person. Just one person. This is... So this is MSI Center, so this is like, if they still gave us CDs with our motherboard, this is like all the stuff that would be on the CD. Only it's not just whatever old versions on the CD, it's just the latest version automatically from MSI's website. So most of the stuff should have already been found by Windows, but we'll just make sure that it's on the latest version here. Let's fix up the date and time. Alrighty, yeah, right when I want the internet, it decides, yeah, we'll update the LAN drivers. Alrighty, let's set up our other SSD. And then I think we're looking pretty good. Boom. There it is. So we got the latest version of BIOS on our SSD there. So we'll go and set that up. When we restart, and we'll enable momentum cache, which is a feature that Crucial has that uses your system memory to speed up your SSD. There's Windows saying reboot the system to enable drive caching. So we'll get the latest version of BIOS on there. We'll put on, turn on XMP profile, make sure that's working fine, and then we're pretty good to go. We'll do our stress test, and if all's well, Craig can pick this up tomorrow. I'll get it boxed up for him tonight in case he comes around early tomorrow morning and I'm still half asleep. Oh, I missed it. Fuck. Okay. That's alright. That was my SSD causing it to hold up then. I just unplugged it and it was like, yep, straight into Windows. What was weird was it was plugged in but wasn't getting power, so it obviously something in my SSD might have shorted or something. It's pretty old, it's had a bit of use. Alrighty. So it's got a relatively modern BIOS on it, but I mean it's a relatively modern board, right? Sweet as. What's up? Oh no. Oh.
She was such a good dog.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could completely see her. I really see guys like to see her. She was a dog. I can't believe it's been that long.
Yeah. Sweet as. Sweet, there's our memory. So let's have a look at how fast our drive is with our top spec memory. So this app here measures the speed of our SSD. So our memory, our SSD is made faster by our memory. Well, there's one thing that we didn't install. Cumulative Windows updates. Alrighty, look at those speeds. Over 10 gigabytes a second there. So that'll put your Gen 4 SSD to shame. Alrighty. So let's run some gaming benchmarks. So I'll run Heaven here, high, no anti-aliasing. And so this number here below RAM is how many frames a second it's currently running at. Sorry, this is gonna interrupt us for a second.
Oh.
Huh?
Oh.
Yeah. Alright, that's all sweet. So now we can continue running Heaven. clock. Where's the one?
Just buy my computer, took a photo of it. I was talking Cassie. Sorry. I was reminding her to get Jason
Yeah.
to this stuff.
Yeah. That was pretty weird, man. That was like exactly what happened to me.
I was just watching you. With my daughter. I'm going to keep reading at him. With her. Lian.
What the fuck's going on?
Batch. Batch is.
I swear it. I swear it is.
Batch.
I swear it is.
And you know what's kind of fucked up? It's happening more and more. Is there like some sort of like trying to like lead you off of? That sounds like a conspiracy.
Alrighty, so that was Heaven there on the out of the box settings. Next we'll run Valley, but we'll do it on Ultra Max Anti-Aliasing. It's also a more demanding benchmark inherently.
Wait, babe. Yes, what? Sorry.
Oh, nice.
You know, Crystal, who used to be the night film girl, who does all the heavy lifting.
Yeah, one of her friends.
Oh, okay.
But you can't fit in
Alrighty,
that
so that
box.
was Valley there on Ultra with max anti-aliasing. And finally, we have the Superposition 4K benchmark. Yeah. Alrighty, so we're ready to do our stress test now. The only thing I'll do, because I have this CPU personally and I'm very familiar with how it runs, and if we stress it out, all cores, all threads at top power, it's just going to run really, really, really hot. Whereas if I make an adjustment, then I'll be fine. just stop it from pushing bloody 250 plus watts through the CPU. So we'll apply that, and we'll also save. I'm going to call it render profile. Oh, I gotta do it like that. Sweet. So if you want to use this for video rendering or something like that, something more demanding than gaming, go into XTU, click on that, click on show values, click on apply, and then go and do what you need to do. Your CPU will run like 25 degrees cooler. So that's all ready to go. So that's going to stress out our CPU completely. And this app here is going to do the same thing for our graphics card. So there we go, CPU running there under load in the 70s. That's what we like. I didn't save that power profile in, we ran it just out of the box, because these things are basically overclocked from factory from Intel. It'd be already at 95 degrees, even with our 360mm cooler on there and all that, yeah. So this power profile is what we want. It's limiting it at 165 watts there. That's not going to cause a problem for us. Our graphics card, you can go up to 83 degrees there on the hotspot, and 100 degrees, sorry, 83 degrees on the GPU I should say, and 100 degrees on the memory and hotspot there. So that's the limits that we're looking at. So what we want to see is it behaving itself and staying within those limits. No, that's fine. Sweet, that's all looking pretty good. I'd be pretty happy with this PC. It's like too over the top. Do you know what I mean?
No.
But sometimes it can just be like, a bit much, eh? Very good. Alright, well look, if anyone's got any other final questions for me before I sign off, now's your time to ask. Because it's time for me to get some dinner. It's definitely dinner time. I feel like I'm starting to lose my voice. I sound a bit croaky, eh? I've been coughing a little bit. I've been having my drink. My cordial and mineral water.
Okay. I'm sorry. Maybe you need to go to bed.
I think I do. But no, this is all looking sweet. This will pass. I'll have some dinner, wind down for a little bit. I'll activate Windows and I'll get it packed up, and then I'll be ready for collection tomorrow. Sweet as. Alright, so thanks everyone for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you all in the next video.